Welcome to the Cofield Aviation YouTube live stream. For all those individuals listening live, or if you're listening to this afterwards through the archives, thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives to invest in your own personal education. My goal is to conduct this bi-weekly YouTube live stream every other Monday evening at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. This will continue every 2 weeks at the same day and time to the best of my ability. Life and work sometimes may get in the way, but I will absolutely give it my best. The purpose of this live stream is to talk about user-generated topics and questions. So please comment throughout the live if you have any topics or specific questions you'd like addressed, and I will do my best to include them in the current or future broadcast. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. My main reason for doing this is to help supplement training for current flight school students. However, I will cover topics that go above and beyond that at times, and it will always apply to all pilots at all different skill levels. I look forward to us fulfilling our commitment as pilots to continuing education and good aeronautical decision making. Again, I appreciate all of you for taking the time to watch this live as a testament to your commitment to learning. One theme I want us to carry throughout this series is this, and I think this is important. I want us to be open, curious, and committed to learning. When we operate in this way, we stay resourced. So think SRM and CRM, right? So single pilot resource management and crew resource management. Use all available resources. The opposite of this is being closed, defensive, and committed to being right. This would be operating in an unresourced way. So think the opposite of SRM. This is not where we want to be as pilots. So let's all have a growth mindset where we focus on the process and the effort we put in. Effort is big. Let's not have a fixed mindset where we just focus on the outcome. I believe there are only winners and learners, so let's focus on that effort throughout our training and future pilot development. If you're not willing to fail, you're not willing to try, and let's learn to take a loss without being defeated. Yeah, I know this all kind of sounds like a therapy session, all right? But however, I believe these thoughts are vitally important as you progress through your very tough pilot training, and just as important after you receive your certificate. If you're just focused on getting your pilot certificate, that's a fixed mindset, which means you're just focused on the outcome. However, if you're focused on fulfilling our commitment as pilots to continuing education, good aeronautical decision making, and proper risk management, then you have a growth mindset, which means you focus on the process and the effort. In closing, and before we get into the topic today, let's think about three things, all right? What must we start? What must we stop? And what must we continue in order for us to meet our goals? Again, thank you for joining us wherever you are. All views expressed in the content is solely that of the person, does not necessarily reflect the views of the person's employer, company, institution, or other associated parties. This is not intended to be flight instruction. All views expressed is for reference only. Remember, these lives will be archived on my channel, so feel free to just sit back, relax, participate, and listen. You can go back later and dig deeper into the content. So let's get started. All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to the first ever Cofield Aviation YouTube live stream. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening, taking the time out of your busy lives to hopefully learn something. You know, kind of the idea that we're going here with is more or less just hangar talk. All right, so we're going to have some discussions, hopefully learn something here and there, and so forth. So we are live from the great state of Alabama. It's super practical today to actually be talking about what we are going to talk about, which is weather information and aviation weather focused in on icing. Like, what is known icing, getting into a little bit about visible moisture. What would the definition of that be? It's a great time to talk about that in Alabama because we are having basically an ice storm in the central part of Alabama, snow to the northern part. So why not, right? Let's talk about that. So basically, we're going to spend about 15 minutes or so. I'm just going to give a really quick um, um, briefing of weather information and kind of like the services that we're using to get the weather, airmints and segments and TAFs and so forth. Um, Before we get into mainly the discussion. All right, so I'm going to bring in a couple of my friends. They were supposed to join us live here. I will say in studio. It's at my house, but they were supposed to join us live here. But with the icing, I mean, come on, this is just a YouTube live stream, so it's not that big of a deal. They are going to be joining us via FaceTime here. So welcome in, guys. How's it going?
It's going, man. How are you?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for joining me on the first ever live. We can talk all fun things of weather information and icing and scary stuff. You guys staying warm there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same here, dude. Same here.
All
So,
good, man.
so introduce yourselves if you don't mind. We'll start over here with the great Mr. Trent Blair. Introduce yourself.
Yeah.
What ratings do you have? How much time do you have, and so forth.
Yeah. Trent Blair, instrument rated, single engine commercial pilot, with about 400 hours. So still a new guy, but learning a good bit. Uh, Working on CFI right now, so that's kind of where I'm at as far as my ratings go.
Awesome, awesome, and we got
Yeah.
the great Dustin Watkins here. That tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So pretty much same commercial single engine, multi engine instrument, with some background in rotor, uh, working as a flight paramedic and TFO with our local sheriff's office. So uh, it's kind of a different viewpoint, I suppose, all around.
So, are you saying you save lives? Is that what you're saying,
I don't know about that.
Dustin? I think that's kind of what you're saying.
I don't know about that,
There's no way I
but
could do. There's no way I could do what you do. I'm telling you, no way.
no, yeah. But it's something we do too, even as med crew members, is looking at weather and discussing things with pilots. So
Yeah.
it's kind of what's sparked a topic here lately is the weather. So yeah,
I look forward to discussing that. So you were the one that kind of brought this topic in for discussion today. Another thing I will add, anybody hop on the chat. Feel free to ask some questions. We'll try to at the end of it, address those questions. Or if you've got topics you think that you want to throw them in there. But I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Kevin Cofield, on the Cofield Aviation ATP pilot rated. Almost have about 9,000 hours now. Fly a private jet for a living, and I'm not God's gift to aviation. I still don't know anything. So we're all continuing learning. So let's go ahead and get started in the meat of it here. So, guys, kind of what I'm thinking about is we just go in and talk a little bit about weather information, and this is not an oral exam for you guys, but let's see what we can remember from that. So this is the website, guys. So this is CofieldAviation.com. By the way, the guy that created this website, awesome job. Dustin Watkins created this website, by the way. Go to the students section, and we're going to go down here to weather information. These are all printable PDF files, so uh, pretty easy to locate and print off if you want. So, sources of weather. Have you guys ever called 1-800 Weather Brief?
that's what I have.
Yeah.
Well, I have
Well,
just to kind of figure it out and see what it sounds like. But as far as ready for a flight and stuff like that, that's not what I have. Yeah.
yeah, you kind of realize that those guys just really want somebody to talk to because they keep you on the phone for like 30 minutes. It's like, whatever. If you're a flight briefer out there, we appreciate you. But anyways, 1-800 Weather Brief, that's the way I had to do it a whole long time ago. 1-800weatherbrief.com, aviationweather.gov. But I mean, I always use ForeFly. Is that what you guys use, or do you, Dustin? You used to use aviationweather.gov a good bit, right?
Yeah, we still do, like, I mean, a combination of things. Four flight's kind of my main thing, but the HIMS tool, we use that a good bit. College of DuPay, a few other little items,
Okay.
but four flight's kind of my ticket.
Yeah.
I'd say 75% of everything I look at is just right there.
Yeah, yeah, I love forward flight. So there are a lot of different, sources of weather out there. But kind of like how I like to break this down is what are we using to get the weather, as far as like what are we actually looking at. So if you're looking for the weather like right now, that's METARs, right? There's the three different types of METARs. I'm not getting into that. AWOS, ASOS, ATIS. AWOS is the 1 minute weather. ASOS is the every hour. AWOS, FAA, ASOS, National Weather Service. But like if you're looking for the weather like right now, you're going to go to METAR, and you're going to basically use that if you're getting ready for takeoff, right? Pulling up the
Right.
AWOS and checking that out. If you're looking for the weather 24 to 30 hours from now, terminal error forecast. All right, but that's only good for 5 nautical miles, right? So what are we using, guys, if we're looking for the weather in the next 24 hours forecasted? What are we using if we don't have a TAF?
Graphical
Oh,
forecast.
there you go. Look at that. This guy's a up and coming mint CFI.
Yes.
By the way, I'm loving doing the CFI initial training with you.
Oh, well,
you,
I think I've learned more the last probably 2 or 3 weeks than I have.
yeah,
I mean, even throughout private pilot, I mean, you just learn so
yeah.
much. You dive deeper into every little aspect. So it's been good, man. It's been great.
Yeah, so do I. I learned a lot too. Delving back in like the FOI stuff. Oh my gosh, you don't hardly look at that. I mean, I've been flying for 20 years, been a CFI for 17 years, so it's been a while since I've done that. But it's been fun getting back in. But yeah, you're right. Graphical aviation forecast is what you're looking for if you don't have a TAF. It just covers a big area. Back in my day, 20 years ago, when I started to fly, it was called the area forecast that Joe Blow Briefer gave us. ForeFlight was not even a thing back then. I wish I would have invented it though. Nice. But anyways, and then if you're looking for the weather 7 days in advance, prog chart, prognostic equals future there. Some little notes down here at the bottom that we'll get into here in just a little bit is pivotalweather.com is a great non-aviation source for weather. That's digging into the weeds a little bit, but it's got to be the greatest thing that I've learned in the past 10 years. A good friend, JP Dice, who also has a YouTube video or YouTube channel. I think it's called Beyond the Briefing. But that's where I learned that. It's absolutely awesome stuff. We'll dig into that a little bit tonight. But you also got the MOS, Mono Output Statistics, and Daily Forecast. So how much do you guys use that?
The MOS?
Yeah, the MOS and that, daily forecast on ForeFlight.
I'll probably go between the TAF and the daily more than
Yeah.
anything. And that daily's not the most accurate tool. But
Well, it's literally.
I'll probably, yeah, use it.
Go ahead.
I mean, kind of use it in with everything else to kind of get an idea of, if you kind of combine everything together, you get a pretty good idea of what it might be. It's kind of hard. It's a piece of the puzzle. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. It's a piece of the puzzle, but the MOS and the daily forecast, that is literally 100% just models. Like that's it.
Yeah.
It's just completely model data. Whereas, your terminal area forecast and your graphical aviation forecast, an actual meteorologist is putting those together. But yeah, I'm completely there. I'm looking at like the TAF, the graphical aviation forecast. I'm looking at the MOS, and I'm looking at the daily, and like somewhere in between there is probably the weather, right? You would think. All right, so what do you guys think is the most dangerous weather during the summertime?
During the summertime?
Yeah, like the greatest hazard.
Yeah. thunderstorms, lightning,
Yeah,
convective activity. Yeah.
yeah, I think so too. To me, yeah, for sure, thunderstorms are the greatest. Um, Trent, since you're working on your CFI, what makes a thunderstorm? What are the three things you have to have, man?
Yeah. Moisture in the air, uh,
Yeah,
stable air, atmosphere,
yeah.
lifting activity.
Absolutely, right? So you got the lifting force, you got instability, and you got moisture, all right? So, you've got to have all three of these to get a thunderstorm. So the kind of the way I like to break down with the students as far as, weather information is like, what gives us this? So what gives us a lifting force? So you got like, cold fronts, you got daytime heating, like during the summertime, that can create lift. But especially cold fronts, because cold fronts is like a bulldozer, right? You got cold air and forces warm air up. That gives you the lift, but that's not quite enough, right? Instability. So instability just talks about atmospheric stability. So you got high pressure, low pressure, high pressure would be sinking air, so that gives you, stability. Low pressure gives you instability, meaning if you get a lift force, it'll keep rising and rising and rising. And then moisture kind of does that same thing. The higher the humidity, the air is actually lighter, so it will continue to rise above the drier air. So if you get that lifting force, instability, and moisture, then boom, 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 we get thunderstorms, right? Um, and talking about lifting force, cold fronts, you got warm fronts, you have stationary fronts, you have occluded fronts, like all those different fronts right there. All of the stuff you need to know for check ride, right? Fun stuff. Uh,
We just had.
yeah, yeah. What's that? What'd you say?
I was just saying we were just talking about fronts just a while ago. So
Oh,
yeah.
fun. That had to have been a riveting conversation. Uh, But yeah, so here's your cold front. You got cold air replacing the warm air. There's your lift, right? Boom, get the cloud development. The warm front, you have warm air overtaking cold air. So you've got this layering, if you will, of this warm air, which gives you the more of the stratocumulus. You don't get this crazy uplift force. You do get, a lift as far as the warm air is being lifted above the cold air. Um, Warm fronts. What are we having tonight? Freezing rain.
Yeah.
So that means there's a temperature inversion if it's freezing rain, right? So we'll see. Maybe something like that's happening. Occluded front is just basically when a cold front catches up to a warm front and then catches up to the colder air in front of the warm front. So basically, here's your cold front right here. There's your warm front. There's that layering of the increase of the warm air, and then here is the colder air in front of the warm front. So that's what an occluded front is. So what kind of weather do we have in an occluded front, man?
Sounds like a question for Stefan.
Yeah, right, right. No, I mean you just have both. You got the weather from a cold front, and you got the
Yeah.
weather from the warm front. So it's like you can see right here on the cold front. Here's your cumulonimbus stuff, and then here's where your actual warm front is. And then when the warm front, you've got this, you know, nimbostratus, cumulus stratus, and then as the air gets colder and drier, you got cirrus, way up there. But yeah, it's not good, right? Not good weather at all. And then a pretty common one, I actually think we this is what we have down a little bit south of us right now, but is a stationary front. So you've got where the cold front and the warm front just meet and they're not powerful enough to move each other. So they just can hang around for several days, right? So there's your cold front moving this way, there's your warm front moving that way, and they just kind of sit there and hang around for a while, right? So those fronts can give you the lifting force. The instability is high pressure, low pressure. That's pretty easy, right? There's your high pressure. So you got high pressure right here, sinking air. See the nice, pretty day that we have? Clockwise, right? I know you know this one, Dustin. How does the air move around a low pressure system?
Counterclockwise.
There you go. There you go.
Answer. We were talking about.
So yeah, counterclockwise, and then you have rising air. So there you go. If you get a lift force, you get that cold front, or you get daytime heating, or whatever. Then boom, 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 it rises up also. And then of course, if you add moisture in that, moisture is lighter than the drier air. So the moisture one makes the air thinner, but it can rise. 2 parts hydrogen to 1 part oxygen, H2O, right? Um, so that basically breaks down what makes a thunderstorm. You got to have lifting force. You got to have the um, um, instability, and you got to have the moisture. All right, what do you guys think's the biggest hazard in the wintertime?
Oh, icing.
Yeah, here we
Let's
go.
see.
And this is where we stop tonight, pretty much, and then we have the discussion from here. Is the greatest hazard in the wintertime is icing. So here's types of structural icing. There's a bunch of different types of actual icing. You got induction icing, like carb ice, if you fly old 1975 172s and you don't get the brand new fuel injected ones, or 150s. Anybody around here flies a 150?
We're living on the edge, man. Yeah.
It's an awesome airplane. I did all my private training in a Cessna 150. It was fabulous. It's perfect.
This natural form of flying. It's like wings on your back, man. Literally.
Hey, it's a great way to build time.
It is. Cheap.
Cheap, baby. Cheap. Types of structural icing: rime, clear, and mixed. Why don't we let the FAA define that for us? The good old AIM. Boy, that is just some tough reading, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Aeronautical Information Manual. Goodness gracious. But the AIM 7-1-19, where we talk about relating to airframe icing, it states, all right, the effects of ice on an aircraft are cumulative thrust, reduced drag. Thrust is reduced, drag increases, lift lessens, weight increases. That's all bad stuff, right? Pilot can expect icing when flying in visible precipitation, such as rain or cloud droplets, and the temperatures between +2 degrees and -10 degrees Celsius. When icing is detected, the pilot should do one of two things, particularly if the aircraft is not equipped with de-icing equipment. You guys got any de-ice equipment on the 150?
No, peanut heat.
Peanut. There you go. That's a de-ice. And then Trent, I think you and I were kind of discussing the other day, like what's the difference between anti-ice and de-ice system?
So anti-ice would be something to keep ice from forming. De-ice is something that can take it off once it's started to form.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, the de-ice would be a pitot heat because it can accrue on there. Then you can turn the heat on and then it sheds it. So it de-ices it, right? And then the anti-ice would kind of be like, Cirruses with TKS and all that fun stuff that actually prevents it. So anti-ice, you got to have it on before you get into these conditions. Whereas de-ice, you can wait till after you encounter it to shed it. Kind of like Barron's. Love a Baron, by the way. Baron is a fantastic airplane. But they have de-ice boots, so you let it build. You let the ice build up, and then pop it off. But so yeah, particularly if the aircraft's not equipped with de-icing equipment, get out of the area of precipitation or go to an altitude where the temperature is above freezing. This warmer altitude may not always be a lower altitude. Well, why don't they say that?
Temperature inversion, yeah.
Temperature inversion, right? We're going to see that tonight. I'm going to pull up the skew-t diagrams on pivotal weather, and we're going to show that insane temperature inversion, which is the reason why we're getting freezing rain tonight. It's fun stuff. Um, so proper pre-flight action includes attaining information on the freezing level and the above freezing levels in precipitation areas, report icing to ATC, or if operating IFR, request new routing or altitude if icing will be a hazard. Be sure to give the type of aircraft when ATC or to ATC when you're reporting. So here's what the FAA says: there's the trace, there's the light, moderate, severe icing, and again the three types is the rime, the mixed, and the clear. Which one's worse of those?
Clear.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Clear icing is the worst, and clear icing you're going to get when the temperature is closer to that 0 degrees, and especially like in cumulus clouds, where it's going to you know uh, freeze, possibly run past protected surfaces. So it's not good at all. And then of course, rime would be it freezes more on contact, so it may be a little bit colder, temperatures, maybe more in the stratus type clouds where you get the rime, and then mixed is of course a mixture of those two. So I guess this brings us to the thought process of known icing, right? Oh my gosh, right? So what is the definition of known icing? Um, let's look at what the aim says, and then let's have that discussion. So the aim states right here: known or observed or detected ice accretion. So known icing to the FAA is actual ice observed visually to be on the aircraft by the flight crew or identified by onboard sensors. All right. So what did you think known icing was before we read that definition?
Well, you know, for me, I've always really understood it as, I think I didn't separate icing conditions from known icing. And so I thought, if there's a air mat or a pyro that, that's and I go fly, the 172
Hmm.
into that, then that's known icing conditions.
Okay.
But um, yeah, that's what I used to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Like I thought legally, flight into known icing would be flying into an area where there's a pilot for icing, or yeah, an airman for icing, or even forecast for there to be icing. Yeah, just even if the conditions existed. Yeah, or fly into visible moisture kind of below freezing.
Yeah, for sure. And and our airplanes, the 150 and the 172, we are only certified for four kinds of operations, day VFR, night VFR, day IFR, night VFR. Are we certified for flying into known icing?
No,
No, it's a limitation, right, for the airplane. So then what that definition of known icing, back years ago, I think it was in 2006 when the FAA came out with the original definition of known icing, which was basically visible moisture. When you're in the presence of visible moisture between basically 5 degrees Celsius and negative, I think it was like 10 degrees Celsius, somewhere around in there, that would be flight into known icing. And then they since changed that with the interpretation, because good old AOPA, right? Um, so here's this little interpretation letter from the FAA. All right, so flight into known ice is not directly referred to in Part 91. However, here's where they can always get you, right? The FAA, as far as 91.9, no person may operate a civil aircraft without complying with the operating limitations specified in the AFM. So here's if your airplane's not uh, equipped to fly into known icing, then boom, you can't fly into known icing because it would be operating the airplane outside its limitations, right? Uh, 9113, the above all, no person may operate an aircraft in a careless or reckless manner so as to endanger the life or property of another. That's kind of like the blanket statement, right? uh, and then we all know 91103 NW craft, right? Got to be available, all information concerning that flight or whatever. So I've highlighted some of these things uh, in this letter of interpretation. So the FAA defines it: known or observed or detected ice accretion right there. So is actual ice observed visually to be on the aircraft by the flight crew or identified by onboard sensor. So actual adhesion to the aircraft rather than the existence of potential icing conditions is the determinative factor in this definition. So 2006, they were like visible moisture freezing. So yeah, if you had an overcast layer at 2,000 feet and the temperature was 2 degrees Celsius at 2,000 feet, in 2006, the FAA said that's known icing. So if you took off and punched through that, let's just say it was 500 feet thick, if you punched through that, then you would be violating this 91.9, right? Yeah, yeah. And so that's where this interpretation came into play is in like 2008, I think. They were like, "Oh, never mind, it's actual ice accretion. You actually looking out the window and seeing that it's ice." Now, does this mean that it's smart to still do that, or that's kind of the discussion we're having tonight, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll finish this and then we can talk more. But so two elements. So the presence of visible moisture. All right. What is visible moisture?
Well, you ask 10 different pilots and you get 10 different answers.
Absolutely. No,
That's
that's true. What is visible moisture? Because that was the original definition in 2006. The FAA was like visible moisture, like plus 5 degrees Celsius to like minus 10 degrees Celsius. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So what do you think visible moisture is?
You know, I always interpreted that as clouds, any type of precipitation, just anything that I can see.
Yeah.
Um, is how I thought about it.
Hmm.
But I've had some pilots that bring the argument of, well, if the temp dew points match, then who's to say you can't form ice in sounds crazy, but clear air. But the temp dew points match, and how did the fog get here, and things, and just bring all those kind of arguments to the table. So that's why I say, like, you talk to 10 different pilots, and you get 10 different views on it. So
Yeah, no doubt. And you're talking about temperature dew point. It's like when we're taught as student pilots, like what happens when temperature dew point come together? What is formed?
oh
Yeah, clouds. And then if it's within 50 feet of the surface, then that means it's
hmm
fog. As you've pointed out before, fog is just simply a cloud, on the ground, right? Um, yeah. So the FAA does actually define visible moisture definitively, and so visible moisture is basically visibility 1,500 meters or less. Now we live in the great United States of America where we ignore the metric system. Okay. Um, Nate Bargatze, Saturday Night Live, the greatest skit I've ever seen in my life. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's about the metric system, and he's George Washington, and it's absolutely hilarious. So please just Google Saturday Night Live and metric system. Nate Bargatze, hilarious. But anyways,
yeah,
so 1,500 meters is basically 5,000 feet, which is 5,280 is an easy number to remember, or it's a mile,
yeah,
right? So basically, the FAA defines visible moisture as one statute, right? One statute mile of visibility or less, you would be technically in visible moisture. So pretty much is what's your minimum flight visibility for day VFR and Class E airspace?
good. 3 miles.
Yeah, yeah. So like
So,
basically, if you're VFR, you're not in visible moisture.
right.
So why do we talk about icing then to VFR pilots and all that other stuff? Ah, you know, you get into whole other, freezing rain would be an issue, like especially tonight or whatever. Um, you know, Ah. So that's number one. The two elements. One is the presence of visible moisture. 2, an aircraft surface temperature at or below 0 degrees Celsius. The FAA does not necessarily consider the presence of clouds, which may only contain ice crystals if it's, cold enough, or other forms of visible moisture at temperatures at or below freezing to be conducive to the formation of known ice or to constitute known icing conditions. While known icing conditions are not defined by regulations, here's kind of where the FAA is going to be at. In cases where pilots have gotten themselves into trouble, all right, in those cases, the pilots chose to continue their flights without implementing an icing exit strategy. Like, come on, I think where the FAA is going with this is they're not putting you in a box, all right. We live in a free country, right? I love it. Just the same thing as like a newly minted 42-hour private pilot can then go fly every single passenger carrying flight in the dead of night, right? Is that smart? I don't know. To me, it's not. But
Yeah.
the FAA goes, hey, it's on you to make good decisions. So same thing here, I think, with icing, is they're not putting you in a box, all right? But let's be smart about this. Let's use all 100% available resources to determine, are we going to stay in ice? That to me is the key. So like what can we look at to determine if we're going to stay in those icing conditions, if we're going to stay in those visible moisture uh, and temperature at or below, like from 2 degrees Celsius to minus 10 degrees Celsius. I think that's where it goes into the 91-103, utilizing all available information to check out um, to check out the forecast to see, okay, one, is it just a situation where we're taking off and we're going to climb through that layer? Let's just say it's from 2,000 feet to 4,000 feet. And then above that, it's beautiful blue skies. And so, yeah, we might pick up a little bit of ice on the way up. And known icing would be looking out the window and actually seeing it. But you know what? The extra strategy is we're not staying in it, period. And so we climb up. Let's just say the tops are at 4,000 feet. ATC levels is off, and we're picking up ice. Go, hey, we need higher. Go 6,000 feet, and then you're in clear blue sky. Voila, right? But like, what do you use? To me, I've got to have two forms of validation. You know, so that's where that pivotalweather.com comes into play. Absolutely fantastic. And then the graphical aviation forecast, because the graphical aviation forecast will give you tops, right? So between those two, I can use skew-t diagrams to determine the tops and the temperature, which is the most accurate. And then second is I can back that up with a graphical aviation forecast. And then third, if it's out there, you've got PIREPs, right? You got PIREPs. Maybe somebody said, hey, the tops are at 4,000 feet or, or whatever. Um, but so yeah, they didn't implement an exit strategy or an alternative course of action. And the aircraft experienced heavy ice formation that validated the forecast of the danger of the aircraft. Uh, whether a pilot has, so this is kind of the FAA of how, if they're investigating an accident, this is what they're doing. All right. So whether a pilot has operated in known icing contrary to any limitations will depend upon the total information available to the pilot in his or her proper analysis of that information in evaluating the risk of encountering known icing conditions during a particular operation. The pilot should consider factors such as the route of flight, flight altitude, time of flight when making such an evaluation. So as a result, flight which results in the formation of ice on an aircraft is not the sole factor for the FAA will use in determining whether enforcement action is warranted in any particular case. In determining whether enforcement action is warranted, the FAA will evaluate those actions taken by the pilot, including both pre-flight actions and those taken during the flight, to determine if the pilot's action were, in fact, reasonable in the light of 91.9, which is the operating limitations, 91.13, which is the careless and reckless, and 91.103, which is your NW craft. The FAA will specifically evaluate all weather information available to the pilot and determine whether the pilot's pre-flight planning took into account the possibility of ice formation, alternative courses of actions to avoid known icing conditions, and if ice actually formed on the aircraft, what steps were taken by the pilot to exit those conditions. Holy smokes, that's a lot. All right, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty much saying, as pilot command, you make the choice, whatever you think. But if something goes south, and we're going to look into it. Did you fly into cloud layer 3,000 feet thick that had moderate to severe icing? Did you fly through 1,000 foot layer that was like forecasting big trace icing? I mean,
Yeah.
kind of leaving it up to the pilot, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. I do. I do. So, here's where I'm going to kind of go into in the next 15 minutes tops, and then we'll answer any sort of questions. Only a couple questions there, but kind of show like how I'm using those skew-t diagrams to back up, so that if the FAA comes calling, is like, hey, what information did you have? This is what I would, basically show them. So pivotalweather.com, greatest thing I've learned in the past 10 years. It's absolutely fabulous. But we can go here to models, and then depending upon what model I'm using is dependent upon like how close I am to the time. So we're just going to kind of guess that we're trying to do a flight maybe like tomorrow morning or something. So if I'm doing that, then I'm going to be using these. If I'm looking at the weather 7 to 14 days in advance, I'm going to use like the GFS here and the European model. But obviously, weather like 7 days in advance is not really all that great. So I'm going to bring up this NAM-CONUS is absolutely awesome. So I'm going to bring that NAM-CONUS up. I'm going to go here so you can see with the continental US. I'm going to bring it down to regional, bring it to the southeast so it kind of zooms in here, and then I'm going to go to forecasted loop, and that's cold. That's some cold weather right there, man. Gosh. But then I'm going to go down here on the left, right above my head, and precipitation type. So now to me, this is basically like a future radar, right? Here is your time. So this is January 16th at 0100 Zulu, and you can just draw that right on down. That's showing our beautiful freezing rain coming through the central Alabama. And then you can keep going. Again, that's pretty much just future radar. So what do we want to say? Like maybe we're planning a flight at like, I don't know, 15Z tomorrow. What would that be? That would be what, 9 o'clock in the morning?
Get the calculator out, man.
I don't know. It's we're adding 6 right now, I think. So this is what the weather would look like at 1500Z. So on the surface, that's kind of like what I'm doing when I'm sitting in the airplane or an hour from departure. Like, are we not pulling up the radar to kind of see what the current conditions? Yeah. So this pivotal weather, this is like pulling up the radar at the time that we're taking off at 15Z. That's the kind of how that I look at it. So if we were going down here to Jacksonville, Florida, like, is that probably a good weather? Yeah, doesn't look like it, does it? In the jet, that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I was
In the jet,
like, the 150 is
that's easy.
probably, yeah.
150, yeah, you get into maybe the Cessna 182. That's probably doable. You could probably, get around some of those buildups or whatever. So that's the big picture. To me, this is like pulling up the radar. All right. Now, one thing here, if you'll look, this forecast run hour, just make sure you are on the latest forecasted run. But so next is then we want to kind of determine the cloud height, right? So the next thing I would look at on ForeFlight would be the terminal air forecast, and that's going to give me, cloud heights, and then that's going to give me winds, right? So this is exactly what the skew-t would do, and I'm just going to basically point to where the Gadsden Airport is. Now I can also go up here in the METAR. It's right there next to Dustin's head. Put in KGAD and hit enter, and it'll center this skew-t diagram on KGAD. So let's look at what this skew-t means and shows. All right, this is absolutely awesome. Let's do a little bit of breakdown. All right, you see these lines right here. You see this 850 line. You see this 700. That's millibars. Here's kilometers. All right, we don't use that in the United States, right? But this is basically sea level. That's 5,000 feet. That's 10,000 feet right there. So for all of us small single engine GA guys, we're looking right here. Now, the green line is your dew point. This red line is your temperature. All right. Now, I don't know why that's yellow, but I don't have a clue. But that is your temperature line. So what happens when temperature and dew point touch or get close together?
You get moisture.
Clouds.
Yeah, clouds, right? So when these two are together, or when they're fairly close together, that can be where your clouds are. Also, down here in the bottom, here are your temperatures. So minus 30, minus 20, minus 10, 0 degrees Celsius. And it shows that at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning in Gadsden, it's going to be 18 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty cold, right? And then these temperatures, so like if you see 0 right here, let me just kind of scoot it a little more here so I can actually point a little bit better. Here's your 0, and you see that blue line running up? That is your freezing level. So here's where freezing level would be at 10,000 feet, freezing level would be at 5,000 feet, freezing level at the surface. And what's our standard lapse rate?
2 degrees per thousand.
2 degrees per 1,000 feet, right? So what that would look like, let's just say we're going to use this temperature right here. 2 degrees per 1,000 feet would kind of look like a line that looks like this, that goes in that direction. Kind of like what it does here, starting about right here, how it kind of goes in this direction. That's a pretty stable lapse rate, meaning as we go up in altitude, the air is getting colder, right? So like here at 10,000 feet, the temperature is, there's 0, there's minus 10. So at 10,000 feet, the temperature is about minus 2 degrees. And then up here at 18,000 feet, the temperature is, what, about minus 20? All right, so it's getting colder as you get up into the atmosphere. But this right here clearly shows as altitude increases, what's happening to the temperature?
Getting warmer.
It's getting warmer. So that's a temperature inversion. So why in the world do you think we're getting freezing rain? All right. Now, obviously, this is 9 o'clock in the morning, so this is, after the fact. But let's look at the skew-t right now, just for fun. We'll look at like right here in the middle of this freezing rain. Yeah. So what happens when that dew point line and the temperature line are together?
You have clouds.
You have clouds. All right, perfect. All right. So now I know where the clouds are. So this is 569 feet at Gadsden. You see how it's just a little bit above the sea level line down here? So that's 569 feet. And we know this is about 5,000 feet. So your clouds, there's not much of a spread right here. Your clouds are probably 800 feet AGL, something like that. Maybe is the basis that this is showing. And then it looks like your clouds are going to be all the way up until, look where it splits right here. So here's are probably your tops. So your tops are, that's 10, 12,000 feet maybe? Maybe about 12,000 feet. So here's my guess. I have not looked at any of this, but my guess is the bases are about 800. The tops are going to be about 12-ish, 13,000 feet. And before I, look into the graphical aviation forecast to see what those are, I have no clue. I've not looked at this at all. But that's just my guess where the clouds are. And now we can look at this from a standpoint of what would be known icing. If my clouds start at 800 feet and tops are at 13,000 feet up here, am I flying in this in a 172 basically below 10,000 feet?
That's not a good idea.
No, not a good idea, but let's find out where the freezing level is. So here is your 0 degrees, all right? And there is that 0 degree line going all the way up. So guess what? It is, go ahead.
Yeah, you've really only got, what, a couple thousand feet of freezing level, actually, right?
That's exactly right. So
Okay.
your freezing level, it gets above freezing about 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it continues warmer. So at 5,000 feet, it's +5. And then it doesn't get back below freezing again till about 10,000 feet.
Right.
So technically, but then what is the definition of ice accretion? So visible moisture, would you say that's visible moisture?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean that's a cloud. Okay, that's temperature and dew point are together. And then the FAA defines it. What do they say? 2 degrees Celsius to -10 in the AIM. I would bump that up to about 5 degrees Celsius. All right, so I would say 5 degrees Celsius and less, invisible moisture. I'm not being there. Like, no way. I'm not there. I'm not staying there. Okay. So if you look right here, that's basically right at 5 because there's your 10 line. Here's your freezing. And so it's right in the middle. So it's +5. So this right here would be 100% known icing from about 800 feet all the way up to about 12,000 feet. Would y'all agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a skew-t graph. Now, just for fun, I'm going to pull up the graphical aviation forecast. So I'm going to go to flight. Yep. We're going to go to flight. We're going to go to imagery. And we're going to go to southeast cloud. And we're looking for about right now. So this is 06Z. Let's back that up 1 to 03Z. And I don't know why I can't zoom in on that, but that's basically saying few clouds at 21 or overcast 1100, tops at 15,000. So they're calling tops at 15. On that skew-t diagram, I kind of came up with 12 to 13. So here's my 2 references of information, right? So skew-t, I'm getting overcast about 800. They're getting overcast at 1100 on the GAF. I'm getting tops at about 12 to 13,000. They're getting tops at 15,000. So guess what? Between the 2 information, we can just say the bottom's most conservative winds. The bottom's going to be 800. The top's going to be 15,000. All right. That's where you're going to be picking up icing, right? Let's see here, going back to there, you're going to be picking up ice and all that. But let's just say for sake, all right, this happened the actual other day. I was helping a guy fly a trip down to Mobile, and it looked fairly kind of similar to this, all right? But let's just say, for instance, about right here, it splits. Let's just say about right here, your dew point goes this direction, temperature goes the other direction, just like it does. Let me pull this up. Just like it does up here. All right. Are there any clouds up here? No. right? The temperature and dew point are like way away from each other. There's no way clouds can form. So let's just say that happened right here. Are you flying?
I mean, depending on the thickness of the layer, I mean, if it's a small little pancake and we can punch through it quick, then I mean,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's really no right or wrong answer here, right? I mean, we read in the FAA interpretation uh, that the FAA is going to look at what are you looking at? What did you see? What pre-flight information did you go through to come up with are you going to fly or not? You know, so there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, to me, if just hypothetically, right? If um, if you've got icing from basically the moment you enter the clouds until about 3,000 feet. What is that? Maybe
and
6 minutes?
yeah, and I would take aircraft performance into that too. You know,
Absolutely.
like, how long am I going to be
Yeah.
flying through that?
To me, if I'm in a Cessna 172 and right here at the 5,000, again, we're hypothetically saying that those split and your tops would then be at 5,000, but I've got to spend this entire time climbing up to that. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You're going to build up, you know, so much ice. Now, technically, when you broke out right here, it is above freezing, so it should shed. But
Right.
this is enough for me to go, nah, no, right? Now, if I'm in a barren where I've got the de-ice boots, I mean, this is no brainer. Yeah, I'll just pop it a little bit, go through it, get on top. It's going to, you know, uh, melt off, and I'm good. And even likely, you would still be fine in a 172 because it's 5 degrees Celsius at 5,000 feet. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no right or wrong answer, but to me, that's kind of what I'm looking at. So let's go back to the example of 9 o'clock tomorrow morning over here at Gadsden. Looks pretty good, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't even looked at the graphical aviation forecast. I don't have a clue. But you might have maybe some scattered stuff here, possibly. And then you got this temperature inversion, and it looks, definitely I would say above 5,000 feet. It's clear. Let's see what graphical aviation forecast shows for tomorrow. What is this? So that is 18Z. Let's look at 15Z. So it's showing scattered at 1500 and just cirrus above. So they kind of coincide there a little bit, right?
So if you take into account like um, on the imagery, like the icing probability and the
Yeah.
severity,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think that's good because what that's looking at, SLDs, so super large water droplets, and where are they at? And if you're looking at SLDs, then that's more going towards like the severe icing stuff, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, but so yeah, that's kind of what I would be going through is, pivotal weather is awesome. I mean, I'm doing this fast. I've got 2 videos on my YouTube channel that go through this, like how do you, do it. I'll make some more because now I've got this fancy stuff where I can sit and point, like this. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing to kind of, determine of where is the icing conditions and so forth. One thing to add, let me go back to 15Z. On the skew-t, we can see where the cloud heights are. Pointed that out. Um, but over here are your winds. So there's all your winds aloft, and it's just your barb. So right there, you can see the winds are kind of out of the northeast, and there's one bar. So your winds are kind of out of the northeast at about 10 right here. So that's the lowest one. So out of the northeast, that's the north. Out of the northwest, I don't know how to read a wind bar here. So out of the northwest at about 10, and then right here is your, so that's 20, that's 40, that's 60. So if you can see, it's about halfway between 0 and 20. So it's about, again, 10 knots. So just from the skew-t diagram, you can see exactly what a TAF would tell you. So winds are going to be out of the northwest, and then you're, since these are not touching, I would say that's not overcast, but that's probably going to be like scattered stuff, and then it's going to be clear as a bell, above that, and winds out of the northwest. So the skew-t is absolutely the best thing that I have learned in quite some time. Yeah.
Yeah, man, especially IFR stuff. If you're, I mean, like me,
Yep.
green with it, just figuring out where the bases are going to be,
Yep.
with an aircraft that you're hand flying, I'm not flying, and this is just me.
You don't
Like,
want to fly in the suit.
Yeah,
Well, flying the suit,
yeah.
I
So
know. Hey,
I'm looking.
it's
I'm
no
looking
fun.
to pop out.
It's
Pop out, and
man, it's no fun to hand fly anything, constantly in the suit. So yeah, you can use these skew-t diagrams to be like, all right, I'm just going to be climbing through it. All right, so I clicked over there on Jacksonville, Florida at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning where all the rain was. And look at that skew-t, right? The temperature and the dew point line are the same all the way up, way on up here, right? So that's obvious that would be clouds. But where's your freezing level? So it looks like it intercepts it right here.
12, 13,000 feet-ish.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So at least hey, I wouldn't be picking up ice. I'd be in the clouds the whole time, but man, that would be solid IFR for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'll just pick something same time tomorrow, 15Z up in Arkansas, and then we can see exactly what the weather's like. I mean, that's absolutely perfect weather, isn't it?
oh, yeah. Yep.
Yep. You got this kind of standard lapse rate, and then boom, temperature inversion. So guess where your smooth flying air will be? Right here and up, because this kind of acts like a cap. So all of that, this is not really daytime heat. I mean, you still get daytime heating in the summer from radiant heating, but like in the summertime, you're looking for this, and then your smooth air. So if you're flying your wife that doesn't like bumps, your smooth air would be above that temperature inversion right there.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like heights either. So
Yeah, I'm scared of heights, man. I'm deathly afraid of heights.
scared. Man, I don't know.
Yeah, that's funny. And so, yeah, like here in Northwest Arkansas, I'm all about flying right there, right? It's going to be cold, obviously. But then the winds over here, it looks like it's out of the Northwest. Same, basically what, about 10 right here out of the Northwest, about 10. And then if you're going from Alabama to Northwest Arkansas, you've got quite the headwind. Up here at about 5,000 feet, you got a headwind at about 20 knots or more. But yeah, I mean that's kind of how I'm using that skew-t diagram to really quickly go, all right, where's my freezing level? Where's my clouds? Where, I mean, it shows it all, right?
Yeah, man, good tool for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Anything that you guys wanna add? We're kind of here where we're gonna be wrapping it up pretty shortly there. We don't have a whole lot of questions. I will look at it in just a second. But anything you want to add, or another scenario, or do you think we kind of covered visible moisture, known icing, and the muddy waters that can present?
Well,
I hear you thinking. That's it.
Well, I'm thinking. So, like me, I'm doing good. Just to fly single pilot IFR with pretty high bases. As far as like if there's any permits for icing or anything, I'm probably not going just because of my lack of experience.
Yep.
But speaking of lack of experience, like, what's the sweet spot between like exercising your piloting skills and kind of
Mm.
pushing yourself a little bit and being reckless? Like, how do you kind of advance and get to where you
Yep.
can maybe, you know, I don't know.
No, I know
When I was a
exactly what
student,
you're saying.
like like student pilot, I was like, 5 knot crosswind, that's my
Yep.
max. And then it's like, well, I got out there with you one day when it was like maybe 10, 11 knot crosswind and got comfortable with that. So that was my new minimum. And
Mhm.
now it's like I'm pushing myself a little bit more as far as crosswinds go, like maybe a little gust. And I mean, is it the same way with icing? Like, will you maybe, I'm going to pop through this little layer. I know it's, a couple 100 feet thick. I can kind of see the sun shine through it. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of how it is. To me, it's all about you have to have an out. You have to have an
yeah,
exit
sure.
strategy. If you're going to push your limitations, you have to have an out. So you talked about crosswind limitation. Well, my out is I'm going to look at another airport and it's got the runway facing into the wind, and that crosswind is not a factor. So if it goes beyond my limitations where the crosswind is what I feel like it is, if I'm not comfortable with it, well, I'm doing a go around and I'm going to the other airport. Now it might suck because I've got to drive 20 minutes, but you have an out. So the same thing with if you're going to push yourself with icing conditions or whatever, you have to have an out. You're going to push yourself with flying in the summertime with thunderstorms. Stay below the bases where you can see it, and always have an out. Don't back yourself into a corner. Use the ADSB weather data out there. Do not fly IMC without an onboard radar. Like, that is absolutely stupid. You know, like, if you don't have an onboard radar, you are flying in the blind. Do not use um, ADSB data or SiriusXM or any of that stuff, because that is old. It's 10 to 15 minutes old sometimes, and it will 100% have you fly right into the thunderstorm. You can see it accident after accident after accident, to where people have ripped the plane apart flying on ADSB data. So to me, it's don't back yourself into a corner. Use all available resources, but that's really it. Just have an out, man. Just absolutely have an out. But please, please, in thunderstorms, like, just stay below the bases to where you can see it. And if you come up on a solid line, you're still using your ADSB, right, for the big picture. Going, okay, well, if I go right of this, then that's a better decision than if I go left, and I'm going to get boxed in by X, Y, and Z down here, right? So that's kind of the only reason how you can kind of expand your envelope is, yeah, you have to kind of push your personal limitations to a point, though, but you always have to have an out, right? It's a whole lot rather to be on the ground wishing you're in the air than in the air wishing you're on the ground. That'd be a situation where you're in the air wishing you're on the ground when you have balked yourself and you don't have an out, basically. That's a great question.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So I think, like, going back to younger days of flying and inexperience, and we talk icing and maybe younger pilots that don't understand it, or aren't as experienced in it. It's like my interpretation of icing, known icing, and what is icing. And I think saying, hey, okay, 1 mile visibility
Mm-hmm.
um, constitutes that. And so, I just being completely transparent here, for the longest time I flew around, looking at the weather as a new pilot, going, oh man, the temperature, it's freezing. Um, it's freezing. It's
Yeah.
freezing.
Yeah.
And, not knowing any better. And it's like, oh gosh, or looking and say, there's a air met that says there's freezing levels from a 4,000 up, and I'm like, oh well, not, that's close enough for me. I'm not going to fly at 2,000 feet because it's freezing. But knowing how to take all that data from all those different sources and putting the pieces of the puzzle together and going, okay, well, what is moisture? I think that's probably um, prior to now. I've asked Trent, I've asked you, I've asked several other pilots, in helicopter world and fixed wing world at different levels of experience, and I swear I get a different answer from everybody. You know, and it all goes back to good ADM and personal minimums, right? So you have some pilots that are more conservative than others, and I'm a conservative guy.
Yep.
But knowing you know data is data, and going off of that, that really helps paint the picture for me. So that's kind of my thought on it, because you look at the vast majority of people that are flying, and they're flying in VMC conditions.
Yeah.
So especially lower hour guys. So knowing that, and knowing, like, just because it's freezing doesn't mean you're going to ice up, or just because there's a freezing level at 4,000 feet, and you're going to plan on flying at 2,000 feet. But you're in VMC conditions. I mean, you've got to have what, three during the day and what, 5 at night. So
so you're not in visible moisture if you're flying VFR.
So it can't happen. So now, I mean, I suppose you start getting into raining or free, like a mixture of something, then but other than that,
for sure. All right, good stuff. So let's look at some of the questions. Hello from North Texas. Appreciate you joining. What was the tool that had the skew-t diagram? Pivotalweather.com is that. And appreciate you, Heath Drobin, for answering all those questions. Boss man is watching. Is he your boss?
He's my boss. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So we've got a group text at work, and I told amongst the med crews and our paramedics and nurses, they're always wanting to learn about weather, and it's just know what we're flying in, and it's really been cool in the job that I do, even though I'm not flying the helicopter.
Yeah.
In EMS, it's having all those different viewpoints from different pilots, and they've got full access to actual, like, we legit have meteorologists that work in our dispatch center. So that's pretty cool. So I told him, I said, tune in, you may learn something. And I want to say, the guy from Texas, man, you say shoot it pilot, sorry for the silly question. Man, nothing silly.
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
It's not at all, man. That's something that I used to say, but I'll call Kevin up and be like, hey, something I should know. I'll ask him, but I'm gonna ask him anyways. Because he may have a different viewpoint on something. So there's never a silly question.
Well, and that's using SRM and CRM, right? Single pilot resource management, crew resource management, like bouncing off, using all available resources to come up with the right decision. But like I said in the start of the broadcast, man, I'm not God's gift to aviation. So once you think, if you ever run into a pilot that they think they have it all and they know it all now, just run. I do not fly with them, because we're all in the same boat. Continuing education, things change. The FAA changes definitions of stuff, obviously. It's a constant changing environment, education-wise, weather-wise, and all that good stuff. So, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. There are absolutely no silly questions. And then, yes, the Pivotal Weather is a free tool. So everything that I've shown tonight is 100% 100% free, on all the documents on the Cofield Aviation website, Pivotal Weather, every bit of that is free. So coming up right at about an hour and a half, that's exactly what we were looking to do, is keep it between an hour and a half. I don't really have anything else to add. I don't think. Did we miss anything?
Yeah, I think it was a good discussion. Yeah,
I do too. I will add. You guys are taking up my iPad screencast, so I can't show people it. But what is the radar that that I love. Dustin,
Oh, right.
radar
Yeah.
scope. Thank you. Radar scope is absolutely awesome, right? It you know, it's a whole lot better than for flight. I would show
It
radar scope, but you're taking on my iPad.
doesn't give a composite image. So, you get different tilts and you get
Yeah.
different products where,
Yeah.
and you were talking about ADS-B being delayed. That's kind of one of the, I guess, complaints or gripes that I have with ForeFlight is like, once you're connected to ADS-B, you are married to that ADS-B data. There's no
That's
way to
true.
get, even if you have cellular, um, you know, I mean, flying in the 150, most of the time we have cellular data, and
Yep.
it's more reliable than, especially in helicopters when it's low. Like, I mean, unless we're around TIS-B transmitter, then we don't get that data at all. So
Yep.
having that as a different product on your iPad is really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally agree. Unless you're in a jet and you've got Wi-Fi, I don't know if that's the experience that I have.
Not
It
all of
is.
us are spoiled.
It is. Let me tell you, uh, the the what I can do in the jet's absolutely fantastic. I've got Wi-Fi, so I have radar scope up. It's pinging off the GPS, so I can
uh,
see radar scope in the airplane with a GPS on top of, obviously, the most important is onboard radar, right? But so with the onboard radar, which is fabulous in the Challenger, on top of the radar scope sitting up on the iPad, and then maybe ForeFlight somewhere else. Oh my gosh, it makes weather avoidance and jet flying. I mean, it's just the absolute easiest thing in the world to do. But yes, we don't have access to that in the 172, and unless you're down low enough, right? You're below the bases, you pick up the cellular data and go about it.
you know,
Yeah, we've kind of like when we first met, he was all like helicopter guy, so he was always flying low, and I was like, oh, what if my instruments way up?
Yeah. It kind of merged. I love it.
Yeah,
It's
hashtag make patterns low and tight again. I guess I don't know.
Yes, man. I used to. You know how tight I'd keep a tail dragger pattern.
Oh yeah, about the same I do a 150.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. All right. Well, I don't have anything else to add. Do you guys have anything else to add at all? Awesome. Hey, appreciate you guys joining me tonight. I hope this went well. We were going to have you in person, but I feel like it has. Nobody said that it sounds terrible. All 11 people watching. Nobody said it looks terrible. So, we'll go on. So, guys, appreciate y'all being here. Y'all have a good night. Stay safe. It's going to be slick roads out there. It's going to be super cold tomorrow. But it's fine. All the kids are out of school, so they'll be. You know about that, Dustin. So, yep. All right. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a good night.